What we are seeing here is not about fixing the FBI, but about turning it into a political tool. After years of claims that the FBI was being misused, the actions taken under President Trump tell a very different story. Experienced non-political professionals were pushed out, while loyalty to one man was rewarded. This raises a serious question about whether justice is being protected or controlled.
As a reminder to Republicans who claim the Biden administration weaponized the FBI, President Biden retained Director Wray, a lifelong Republican who was President Trump's nominee for the office. After his second election in an unprecedented move, President Trump forced out Director Wray and nominated Kash Patel, arguably the most partisan FBI director ever. Director Patel came to the FBI with a political mission, and he spelled it out in writing in detail. He wrote, "Government gangsters, quote, the rot at the core of the FBI is not just scandalous, it's an existential threat to our Republican form of government," end quote. And with the power of his office and the blessings of the president, he attacked the FBI with a vengeance. Mr. Patel had falsely claimed the FBI, quote, was planning January 6th for a year, end quote. He even went so far as to produce a song by the January 6 rioters who violently assaulted police officers in the Capitol. He compiled an enemies list of public servants he called government gangsters, like former FBI Director Mueller, whom Patel called, quote, an utter swamp creature. Former Trump officials who served with Mr. Patel warned us he would weaponize the FBI to protect the president's allies and target his critics. And indeed, Director Patel has already inflicted untold damage on the FBI, putting our national security and public safety at risk. Since January 20th, the Trump administration has engaged in an unprecedented purge of FBI officials. As we heard from highly credible whistleblowers, Mr. Patel was involved in directing this purge even before he was confirmed, despite his sworn testimony to this committee. It began with terminations and forced retirements of all 6 nonpartisan career officials who run all 6 branches of the FBI, assistant directors. Since then, at least 18 of the 53 special agents in charge of FBI field offices have been removed, along with many other senior officials. Individual agents have been targeted for termination simply due to the work that they were assigned, such as January 6th investigation. In fact, according to former acting FBI Director Brian Driscoll, in a lawsuit filed last week, Director Patel made this very plain, telling Driscoll personally, quote, that his own job depended on the removal of agents who worked on the cases against the president, end quote. And even though he knew, quote, the nature of summary findings were likely illegal. At the same time, Director Patel has installed MAGA loyalists as political appointees in key career positions, including conspiracy theorist Dan Bongino as FBI Deputy Director, the first time in the history of the FBI that this position has not been held by a career FBI agent. Director Patel has also reportedly initiated loyalty test, requiring dozens of officials to sit for polygraph exams and answer inappropriate questions about whether they've made negative comments about him personally. Of course, as is often the case in the Trump administration, the rules apply to thee, but not to me. As we understand it from highly credible sources, key members of Director Patel's senior executive team and others on the 7th floor had disqualifying alerts on their initial polygraph exam. Well, how did they survive? They survived because of a personal waiver by either the director or the attorney general to remain employed by the Bureau. Understand the context here. Political operatives in key positions, given the routine FBI polygraph exam, failed and had to receive waivers to continue their positions. They were lucky to keep their political appointments. They were. But the 5,000 career civil servants the director has so far forced out of the Bureau's ranks were not offered that same courtesy. 5,000. This mass exodus has created a disastrous brain drain, particularly in the fields of cybersecurity, counterterrorism, and counterintelligence. For example, my office has received information indicating that cuts to the Bureau's cyber division will cut personnel by half, despite the ever-increasing threats posed by adverse foreign actors. The brain drain is exacerbated by Director Patel's misuse of remaining FBI personnel and resources to focus on other priorities of this administration. According to reports, the 25 largest FBI field offices have been ordered to divert 45% of their agents from their primary missions to work on the mass deportation of immigrants. Just as concerning is Director Patel's plan to hire fewer qualified agents by removing the college degree requirement and reducing new agent training at Quantico from 18 weeks to just 8. So we have a brain drain and a significant watering down of training. Quite a record, Mr. Patel.
The situation surrounding Kash Patel's leadership of the FBI represents a sharp reversal of the arguments many Republicans once made about protecting federal law enforcement from political misuse. For years, conservatives claimed the FBI had been weaponized under President Biden. Yet Biden chose institutional restraint, retaining Director Christopher Wray, a lifelong Republican and President Trump's own nominee, to preserve continuity and independence. That decision reflected a basic democratic norm. Law enforcement should not be reshaped every time political power changes hands. President Trump's decision to remove Wray and replace him with Patel broke that norm and signaled a shift from institutional stewardship to ideological control. What makes Patel's tenure especially troubling is that his political intentions were explicit. Long before taking office, he portrayed the FBI as corrupt and illegitimate, calling it rotted and filled with government gangsters. Such rhetoric matters because leadership language sets institutional culture. When the head of a law enforcement agency views the institution itself as the enemy, reform risks becoming retaliation, breeding suspicion, and internal purges rather than professionalism and public trust. Patel's past conduct reinforces those concerns. His repeated false claims that the FBI orchestrated January 6th undermined factual reality and lent credibility to conspiracy theories tied to political violence. His promotion of a song by January 6th rioters, individuals who assaulted police officers, and his public attacks on career officials like former Director Robert Mueller reflect grievance-driven politics imported directly into federal law enforcement. These actions blur the line between accountability and personal vendetta. Warnings from former Trump officials now appear prescient. Since January 20th, the reported purge of FBI leadership, including the removal of all 6 assistant directors and numerous field office heads, has hollowed out institutional experience. This was not routine turnover, but a dismantling of leadership built over decades. Allegations that agents were targeted simply for working on January 6th cases are especially alarming. According to a lawsuit by former Acting Director Brian Driscoll, Patel tied job security to removing agents involved in cases touching the president, despite knowing such actions were likely illegal. If true, this is precisely the kind of political weaponization Republicans once claimed to oppose. At the same time, Patel reportedly elevated ideological loyalists into roles traditionally held by career professionals. The appointment of Dan Bongino as deputy director symbolized a shift from expertise to loyalty. Reports of loyalty tests, selective polygraph waivers, and uneven standards further expose a troubling double standard. One set of rules for political allies and another for career public servants. The consequences are tangible. The departure of thousands of experienced employees has created a dangerous brain drain in cybersecurity, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism, areas where expertise cannot be quickly replaced. Redirecting agents away from core missions and lowering hiring and training standards weakens readiness at a moment of rising global threats. From a progressive perspective, the FBI exists to serve the Constitution, not a president or political movement. Undermining independence, expertise, and institutional norms does not strengthen democracy. It erodes it. What is unfolding is not reform, but politicization, and the long-term cost will be measured in lost trust, weakened security, and damaged democratic institutions.